Greetings, everyone, and welcome. We're going live right now with breaking news. I was actually working on prepping for the live with Jake Bro, and that will still be on task and target as well. I seeing the same things you guys are seeing, but I've got some feeds going here and see if I can give you an update on everything that is happening. But right now, the information coming in is that as many as 6 missiles were just launched towards American bases from Iran. I can actually show you guys. This is the video coming out of Iran. Going towards Qatar. Now, of course, a missile can change direction, but we've got confirmation of this going on like crazy right now. So I was holding back going, okay, do I go live and talk about this or what's really going on here? And then we saw more and more confirmation coming in. So I'm going to be sharing everything with you and tell you what's going on to the very, very best of my ability. I can tell you that my dear friend there in Iran, just within 5 minutes ago, was in all caps and was messaging, yes, they did attack. It's happening. So right now I'm trying to watch for anything the United States would say. I can tell you that Donald Trump has assimilated the national security team. They were supposed to meet at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but right now it is 12:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is 7:47 in Israel. It is 8:17, yes, in Tehran. So this is what we have going on right now. Now, let me get to any update that I can possibly giving you. And thank you for being here, guys. This is I even popped this on my moderator team. Just thank you, everybody, for jumping in really quickly. Here's what I can tell you, and this is confirmed. I'll go back 30 minutes. I'll go back an hour. 1 hour ago, what's funny is, I mean, it's not funny. I guess that's the wrong word to use. But let me go to here. Let's start with this image here. What we are seeing is right now missiles flying towards Qatar, which is this area right here. This is Iran over here, and they're coming across. That is what we are aware of right now. I can tell you that about 15 minutes ago, French and British Air Force in the region scrambled their jets for air defense. I am assuming that the defenses will be in place to take out the strikes. They scrambled. I can tell you right here that it was about 30 minutes ago. You can see this. I can't read it, but I had it translated. The bottom line is this was from Qatar. They closed their airspace about 30 minutes ago. So all of this started to happen and unfold, and I was watching it. I also can tell you what happened about 30 minutes ago was this. These were inbound flights coming into Qatar. Qatar closed its airspace, and really focusing on this one right here. This was from London Gatwick coming into Doha. It was circled here multiple times and then turned around and left. And you can see a few planes here right at the last clip. But now the Qatarian, I assume that's the proper way to say it, the Qatarian airspace is closed. And of course, these planes will be leaving or en route that were already in the air to get out of that Gulf, because that's where the missiles will be flying and are flying or are already there. Let me get back to that. So that is what has happened. And then we got the message that Donald Trump had called his Security Council. Now, let me keep up with this as fast as I can now and I'm going to go to my buddies that I trust. What we know right now, Trump urgently convened his national security team. Iran is positioning missile launchers for possible strike, and we know the missiles have already launched. It is looking like Iran was planning to strike the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. We will see, because I'm getting ready to go right back to that, and I will show you guys. There was zero prep on this, so I'm doing it live right here. Okay, so what we're looking at here, now I did locate this so I can show you. Let's go from here to this. So what we're talking about, and then I'll come right back. Of course, this is Iran, and this is Qatar right there. The American air base that they're looking at, or American military installation, is right there in central Qatar, or Qatar. And if I go into satellite view, let me get my marker off there and go into satellite view, I can actually show you guys. We're talking about this installation here. This installation right here. So this is the intended, talked about target. Whether that will end up, but I need to get back to the real feed because it may have already happened. Let me do this. And no, I can't see any chat right now or anything. I want to go to, the last thing was the Al Udeid. Al Udeid is the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. UAE and Saudi Arabia also closed their airspace, and U.S. urging its citizens in Qatar to immediately seek shelter. Now, let me go where I trust, which is right here. 12:37 p.m., 15 minutes ago, Iran confirmed fired on American targets in Qatar and Iraq. That's coming out of Israel. This is all early. The Iranian attack has begun. We have explosions in Doha and Iraq. Let me see if there's any feed coming from anything from United States media. Oh, here we go. Let me go back to this. No, I mean, what kind of mainstream media do we have? I just don't understand it. I know I'm giving you accurate information, 100%. Several explosions at the American base in Qatar, in Doha, 12:39. How many missiles were launched? 6 missiles were launched towards Qatar. And I know I keep pronouncing that differently because I don't know the proper way to say it. So let's go with Qatar. 6 missiles towards Qatar and 1 towards Iraq. Okay. 12:42 p.m. I can confirm for you that all missiles were intercepted. All missiles were intercepted. So I do have this little bit of clip here out of Qatar. Let's do this. You can see it. I don't have time to put it this, but you can see those little flashes coming across the screen right here. That was actually in Qatar. So I can tell you that they have taken all of the missiles out. Yeah, confirmed from Barak Ravid. This was it right here. Israeli official tells me Iran launched 6 missiles towards U.S. bases in Qatar. Trump assembles national security team in amid threat of Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces in the Gulf. So it has happened. This was just a few minutes ago. The question is, What happens now? I don't know, because this, first of all, if the coalition of forces there, which is, we know for a fact that British airplanes were put into the air. We know for a fact that French were put into the air. Iranian state TV IRIB says Operation Basharat al-Fatah against U.S. bases has begun. Thank you for that, Oink. Also, thank you there, Petra Olson. Let me do that. Let's do this, guys. Let's go here. Let me go to Persian News right now and check that. And then I'll come back to my Iranian guy. I mean, my Israeli guy. Yeah, so here we have it. This is coming out of Iranian news, and it's so interesting. Right here it is, guys. I've translated from Farsi. Some sources claim Iran targeted the U.S. base in Al Udeid, Qatar. According to defense reporter Tasnim News Agency reports that explosions were heard in Doha, the capital of Qatar. And just because you hear explosions does not mean that there was a strike on the ground. It can be air defense or airplane taking out the incoming missile. The explosion happens in the air. If you're in a bunker or if you are hiding, you still hear the explosion. And unless you're around explosions all the time, it's probably difficult. I know it's difficult from the experience in Ukraine to identify whether that explosion, okay, was that in the air? Was that on the ground? Now, if it's close to you and on the ground, you know, because you feel it. But so for sure, there's going to be explosions, whether that takes place in the air or on the ground. In this regard, some sources claim that Iran launched a missile attack on the American base in Al Udeid, Qatar. This has not yet been officially confirmed. The news is ongoing. So that's what we have coming directly out of Iran. Let me do this, and I'll get another source, and then I'll go back to... I will tell you that we'll be talking about this more later, because I won't stay live for 3 hours now, but I got a 4 o'clock live scheduled with Jake Bro. And of course, we'll be discussing this. So we have it that, yes, flares were seen over Qatar. Loud explosions are heard over Qatar. That's confirmed. And if I go a couple more places, let's do this. We'll check one more place for you guys. Okay, here we go. I can get you some of this in here now. Here we go.
Happened just after these attacks, and then we will know what's the posture, what's the status quo. But this is unprecedented, of course.
Of course, it is unprecedented. There was talk of Iran retaliating, as you say, against the U.S. strikes on its 3 nuclear sites in Iran. However,
this is Al Jazeera I'm bringing in. Let's just get a little bit, because no American media is doing anything yet.
In response, so many people believe that Iran might actually do an alternative retaliation, something covert, something cyber, something like closing the Strait of Hormuz. The region was on alert. The U.S. bases in the region were on alert. But it's hard to believe that actually this was going to happen, that Iran was going to go through with escalating this conflict in the way it has.
Well, the fact is that the whole situation is escalated. It's been escalated since yesterday dawn, when the nuclear facilities were attacked. And we thought that the Iranians were taking their time to consider, to calculate before retaliating. They've retaliated against Israel by hitting, by launching several barrages towards different Israeli cities yesterday and today. And now it's clear that the Iranians want to make a clear statement that they will not allow any breach to their sovereignty. But what is the cost of this, and what is going to be the ceiling for such an escalation? This is something that no one knows. We are still also waiting a political retaliation from the Iranians, the NPT exit that the parliament was discussing. And actually, this is going to be another major escalation in retaliation to the attacks. So the whole region is now on the verge of...
Let me pull that down and give you guys a little bit of food to thought while we're watching this. So if you did not see the video that I just put out about an hour ago, make sure you go check that, because we need to remind you of something. There's a couple of things that have happened today prior to Iran firing missiles. And that is the Iranian foreign minister met directly with Vladimir Putin today. Directly. And we've got video. I played some translation of what they were talking about, what was made public. But we do not know if there was any green lights. Okay, sling some missiles. We do not know. And you say, well, why would Russia do that? Are you kidding? Because that would cause the price of oil. It's going to cause the price of oil to go up. Any types of escalation. That is why President Donald Trump was tweeting earlier today, I'm watching you drill, baby, drill. I can actually show you. And this is what I always encourage people to do, is watch the big story. And if we look at the big story, it's connected here, and we'll come back to Al Jazeera in a moment, but it's right here. And that is this. 3 hours ago, everyone keep oil prices down. I'm watching, all caps, you're playing right into the hands of the enemy. Don't do it. In addition to that, Donald Trump here to the Department of Energy, drill, baby, drill, and I mean now. So does the President of the United States know that something was coming? Of course he does. You know, we have intelligence. Mossad's on the ground there. CIA's on the ground there. FSB is on the ground there. Ukrainian SBU is on the ground. Everybody's on the ground there. Chinese are on the ground. We know what's going on, and we know that there is a possibility that the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. Well, this plays right into Vladimir Putin's hands, as it will cause the price of oil to go up, which all of this is connected, assist him in funding the war machine that he is waging against Ukraine. And with his statement today that I have just translated and voiced over, I was getting ready to put up the second video, and I need to do that, because Vladimir Putin today, in a bold statement to Russian military, called out NATO, made a direct reference to the United States as warmongering and causing the problems through the Kyiv regime. And then Dmitry Peskov, the official spokesperson for Vladimir Putin, came out of that meeting, and the personal little nerdy guy there, who is always interviewing, Zarubin is his name, was asking Peskov, okay, with the Iranian strikes, with what Putin just said, with meeting the foreign minister of Iran, is anything changing here? And Peskov replied, well, of course things are changing. You know, we're trying to be friendly with the United States, and we have a strategic partnership with Iran. And the U.S. is pushing this war to us through NATO and through Ukraine. So, of course, the relationships are challenged. So this is where the story gets much, much bigger, and we have to pay attention to it. Let me bring these guys back in here, and let's see if we...
At least in Doha, from the air defenses. However, now we know more of attacks also in Iraq, in Bahrain. At least there are sirens that were reported in Bahrain. So it seems that...
Okay, we're getting new information there.
American bases in the region are currently under attack, or have been under attack in the past minutes, because I'm not sure whether the attack is still ongoing till this moment.
Okay, so we have for sure missiles slung at Qatar. We've got a missile slung at Iraq, and now this gentleman from Al Jazeera there on the ground saying that air alarms were going off in Bahrain. He did not state that there was a missile, but air alarms going off.
Major strike on Iranian nuclear facilities and an Iranian retaliation, or it's going to go towards a new episode, and President Trump might seize the moment, seize the pretext to get involved more and more in this war. Also, most importantly, we'll have to hear also from the countries in the region that were under this attack.
Ali, just talk us through the timeline today, because you were talking to us earlier
Here we go.
about, we were hearing some news about a possible Iranian retaliation in the coming hours. I mean, clearly that was leaked news. You were getting a heads up of what was to come.
Indeed, just like a few hours ago, we got a leak that there's going to be something tonight, probably a political retaliation. And then we understood that there might be retaliation, military retaliation. So it's clear that the Iranians were considering their options over the past 24 hours, and they kept silent on what they are going to do. Of course, this day started with a midday huge explosions in Tehran after Israeli airstrikes. The Iranian foreign minister was in Moscow meeting the Russian president.
There you go.
It was clear there were several paths or parallel paths that are going on. Iranian retaliation to Israel also. So we were seeing...
Okay, so here he is, and look, I don't even know who this guy is. Only thing I could do for anybody covering this live was Al Jazeera, and he's on the ground there, so I pulled it in. I checked any other media source, and they were not live yet. So he's there. He talks about the Iranian foreign minister meeting Russia. We already talked about that. The other thing I can tell you right now, now we're up to 10 ballistic missiles being fired. It was 7. It's now 10. And I can tell you that U.S. aircraft 1 minute ago were just scrambled from Prince Sultan Air Base, and that is located in Saudi Arabia. So the U.S. now has aircraft in the air out of Saudi Arabia. We also know that the French are in the air and the British are in the air. Guys, this is a problem here.
Aligned.
Let's go back here.
With the supreme leader, as we know.
And problem probably not the fairest word. This is an escalation. This is an escalation.
One voice, and we earlier heard the supreme leader give his first response to the U.S. strikes, promising to punish the Zionist enemy. I mean, really, the signs were there, weren't they, that Iran was not going to back down after the U.S. struck its nuclear sites?
Okay, let's listen to this.
Well, now we are seeing another statement from Iran, one from the IRGC saying that the Dhufra base in the Emirates was also, the United Arab Emirates was attacked with Khaybar 3 missiles. Also, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council will issue a statement on Iran's missile response to the U.S. aggression in a few weeks, in a few minutes, not weeks. So we have now the statement in response to America's aggressive and brazen action against Iran's nuclear sites and facilities. A few hours ago, the powerful armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran destroyed the American air base in Udeid, Qatar. The number of missiles used in this successful operation was the same as the number of bombs used by the United States in its attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, and the base targeted in the attack by Iranian forces was far from the urban facilities and residential areas in Qatar. This action does not pose any threat to our friendly and brotherly country Qatar and its noble people, and the Islamic Republic of Iran remains committed to maintaining and continuing warm and historic relations with Qatar. Then there's another, I'm sorry, I'm just updating the statements that are arriving.
I'm getting the same ones.
After one.
I can confirm this guy.
That the last one is that from the armed forces, this of our forces will turn any repetition of aggression into accelerating the collapse of U.S. military infrastructure in the region.
That's exactly right. Okay, so that he's okay. Okay, I'm going to confirm this Al Jazeera reporter, and I'm going to confirm him from Israel. And then I'm going to confirm him from Iran. They both have made statements now, and I want to pop those out there. In fact, the actual quote, this guy probably was reading Farsi and translating in his head. I'm reading it and have it translated good from Israel. And it says, the era of hit and run is over. This is what the Iranian Republic Guard official statement is. The era of hit and run is over. That is a direct statement against the United States strike on the nuclear enrichment facilities, the uranium enrichment facilities that occurred on Saturday night, USA time. And they did say the era of hit and run is over. Any repeated attacks will accelerate the collapse of the United States presence in West Asia. You're not welcome here. Okay, now, I also have the latest update, and I'm sorry, guys, I cannot see the chat. I can if I go over there to it, but I can't keep up with it. So thank you. Thank you. If you are asking questions or whatever, my mod teams are jumping in here now, but just can't keep up. I just want to keep the information flowing to you. Thank you for being here. If you haven't subscribed, this is what we do, but for Ukraine and the world. 30 years working around the world, and just thank you. So let's keep going. I hate commercials, and I don't want to do a commercial, but I just want to say we're grateful that you're here, trusting us to disseminate this information for you. Now, let's go back to, I want to go back to Farsi news now, and they have updated that. Let me do this. Let me switch to this view here. I'm back on the Persian news now. I've switched it. They now confirm, as you can see here, earlier, just 5 minutes ago, it says, possibly. Now we have Iran targets U.S. base in Al-Udeid, Qatar. According to the defense group Tasnim, following the clear aggression of the criminal regime of the United States against peaceful nuclear facilities of the Islamic Republic and the clear violation of international law with the planning of the Supreme National Security Council and leadership of Central Headquarters of Seal of Prophets, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps with the Sacred Code, or Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, has targeted the Al-Udeid base in Qatar with a devastating and powerful missile attack in Operation Besharat Fatah. Besharat Fatah is the name of the operation. If I take that and I put that, let's see if that means anything. Just okay, so Besharat Fatah translates from Arabic, good news. So that's what we're looking at right here. That's, let me go back to this for you, and then we'll go back to the article. So that means good news. So we'll see what unfolds from that. And let me go back to this and back to this, all these buttons. The text of the statement continues as this: in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, whoever attacks you, attack him in the same way as he attacked you, noble and resilient nation of Iran. That's what that says. Following the clear military aggression of the criminal regime of the United States of America, peaceful nuclear facilities, yes, we have struck with a powerful missile attack. The message of this decisive action of the nation's children in the armed forces is it clear and explicit for the White House and its allies. The Islamic Republic of Iran, relying on God Almighty and relying on the faithful and famous people of Islamic Iran, will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security unanswered under any circumstances. With the aggression of the American enemy, it became clear to everyone that the evil of the Zionist was an extension of the Americans' design. Accordingly, we remind you that in this national defense, the U.S. bases and mobile military targets in the region are not a point of strength, but a major weakness and a thorn in the side of this warmongering regime. I'll give you the last paragraph so we can stay right up. On the eve of the month of Muharram, the month of mourning for the leader and commander of martyrs, Hazrat Abdullah al-Hussein, we once again warn the enemies of Islamic Iran that the era of confrontation is over, and the will of the country's powerful and popular armed forces, any repetition of mischief, here you go, will lead to the acceleration of the collapse of the U.S. military establishment in the region, their ignominious escape from West Asia, and the realization of the common aspiration of the Islamic Ummah and the freedom-loving nations of the world in eradicating the cancerous tumor of Zion. End of message. Well, I don't know, but to me, that's escalation. Now, I want to go back to my Israel feed. I can tell you right now, oil prices are going down. Qatar is saying they intercepted. In fact, I can show it to you. No problem here. This is over Qatar. Let's go here. There, you can see the interception in the air. You can see more targets coming in here and here. Interception, interception, interception. And you know what? This is all breaking and live. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Let's go here.
It actually is, and indeed what we know to be there right now.
Well, in the lead up to this, as the U.S. decided to attack Iran, we saw reports that a lot of military assets, including bombers and fighter jets, were moved from Udeid. And it is also worth noting that the Americans were cognizant of what could happen to their allies and their assets in the region. So they did not use this facility to attack Iran. But they did attack Iran using B-2 bombers, which flew all the way from the United States with refuelers. Al Udeid base is about half an hour's drive towards the north of the country, towards the border with Saudi Arabia. It's situated between Doha and the border of Saudi Arabia. It is, if you leave Doha behind you, then there is the industrial area, and after the industrial area is the Udeid Air Base. It is the largest in this region. It hosts tens of thousands of U.S. military personnel, but those numbers continue to change because those forces keep moving in and out. It is a major logistics hub for CENTCOM as well, because all of its air assets are based here, including drones as well as jets and transport aircraft as well. Multiple flights that were taking place, whether it was providing aid to various countries, whether it's evacuation flights from Afghanistan, from the entire region going from east, west, north, south. This plays a pivotal role for years because it has been the largest of its kind in Qatar. And it has been a testament to the relationship between these two countries, between Qatar and the United States as well. So not just U.S. air defenses, but the Qatari defenses are here as well. And obviously, the Qataris have installed air defenses on all major installations as well, including the airport and other parts of this country. So yes, it appears on the map to be a small country, but it's a large area. And these strategically placed locations are away from population centers. And
okay, now let me tell you, what I'm reading right now is really interesting. It says that, and we saw some of the takedowns on the video I was showing you out of Qatar. You could see the interceptions in the sky. Qatar is stating that there's no statements from the U.S. Qatar is stating that the missiles were intercepted and there are no casualties. Iran is stating that 3 of the missiles hit. So this is all breaking and unfolding. For me, I'm going to lean toward Qatar because we've seen the air defense working and they're a little bit more trustworthy. Now, let me go back to my Israel feed.
45 minutes, I would say, after hearing those explosions over the skies of Qatar. Let's now bring in Mahmoud Abdul Wahid, because he's live for us in Baghdad, where I understand about half an hour ago, there were the airbase, the US airbase there, was put on maximum alert. So tell us what's been going on there.
Well, at least two U.S. military bases in Iraq, namely Ain al-Assad in Anbar province in western Iraq and Harir base in northern Iraq, both have been put on high alert. That is after the threats made by Iran-aligned armed groups in Iraq. As you know...
Okay, we're going to get back to listening to him. He's talking about a missile coming in toward Iraq. But, all right, 1:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is coming in from my friends in Israel. Breaking, there are 3 reports of impacts at the U.S. base in Al-Odad. This is from Israel now. So we've got Iran stating we hit them. We've got Qatar stating we intercepted, but they did make the statement there's no casualties. And now we have Israel saying it appears, now I'm reading the quote, that there have been 3 direct hits on the large American base in Qatar. There are no casualties as the base was evacuated several days ago, but damage has been caused. That's the latest right there, and I'll keep going. We'll listen to this guy again.
Military base in western Iraq was attacked twice today, but it was foiled by the U.S. forces. So there are no casualties reported. But on the other hand...
Iran has just launched Shahed drones towards Qatar. If you are active on my channel all the time and we're covering Ukraine and I'm in Ukraine or whatever, we talk about Shaheds that Russia is using against Ukraine every day. Used last night in a devastating attack in Kyiv and in Bielorussia and in Mykolaiv region and Odessa. And they use them, and they're good in combination with missiles. And I can tell you right now, about 15 minutes ago, Iran launched the Shaheds towards Qatar.
The Iraqi government to put pressure on the U.S. not to allow Israel to use Iraqi airspace to carry out airstrikes inside Iran.
Just tell us a little bit more, Mahmoud, about the U.S. bases that exist in Iraq, because they've been there for quite some time, and they are quite significant, aren't they?
Air alarms now in Bahrain. 13 minutes ago, I told you about that, and now Bahrain is telling all of their people, small little place, I can look at it on the map for you, but to get into shelter immediately.
The United States and the Iraqi government. What we have now in Iraq is around more than 2,000 U.S. troops across Iraq, and they say, the Iraqi government says,
Shahed drones are also flying towards Iraq. So this may, be 7, 8, 9, 10 missiles. It all clears. We have hits. We don't have hits. It will all clear. But what I can tell you is this. There are now drones flying in also towards Iraq, and there are drones flying in towards Qatar. And we have Bahrain telling their people to get into shelter immediately. Let's go back.
U.S. military bases have been receiving hundreds of attacks from Iran-aligned armed groups over the past 2 years. You know that there have been attacks and counterattacks. These armed groups have been attacking U.S. military bases in Iraq, and the headquarters in Iraq have been also receiving attacks from the U.S. forces since the beginning of the Israeli military campaign on Gaza in 2023. So the situation remains very tense, with security forces deployed around U.S. military bases and also interests, and that includes the U.S. embassy in the Green Zone in Baghdad and its consulate in Erbil in northern Iraq.
And the U.S. bases there, they've been attacked before, haven't they, by Iran or by the affiliated proxies, by the militia in Iraq. Notably, a very pre-warned, a pre-signaled attack following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the Al-Quds chief, the Quds chief in Iraq. It was assassinated by the U.S. back in 2020. Again, Iran responded. That was designed, though, wasn't it, to be a very contained, understated attack. Do you see the threat that's happening today to be in the same bracket?
All right, I can tell you that Right now, Iran now stating that they are having, okay, this is the craziness of it. We are having good success in our response to the American attack on our systems or onto our nuclear facilities days ago. I can also show you this right now. This is just minutes ago. So crude oil, $72.69 a barrel, down 4%. Brent crude oil, 75, down $1.29. It opened at 80. WTI crude opened at 78. Days range, you can see all of that. So it could be that the big picture that this attack is actually weak is affecting oil prices. The other thing that we would have to watch for in regard to oil prices is not so much this type of retaliatory attack, but more importantly, it would be what happens if the Straits of Hormuz are blocked. And I will show you all of that right now as well and keep you completely updated. Then we'll go back. While I'm getting that up, I'll put this back in for you.
Iran or by Iranian aligned armed groups in Iraq. Because as you know that the strategic dialogue, this is the military agreement between the Iraqi government and U.S. And the U.S. stipulates that.
All right, let me go to this now for you.
The Iraqi government has to protect these military bases.
Okay, so you hear that. Let's go here. So what we're talking about, Iran here, and if you're just joining, they have launched missiles at Qatar. Multiple different reports, 3 strikes, no strikes. It will clear itself, but even Israel saying that there were 3 hits on the Al Udeid air base here in Qatar, which is American. Additionally, Bahrain right now putting their people into the bomb shelter. So it's all this area here. All of this airspace, of course, is closed, and we have American jets, British jets, French jets in the air, and we have Shahed drones going this way. But not missiles now. That I believe the missiles are done, and we have Shahed drones going this way. That's for sure. And they putter along. But they are in the air. So Shahed's heading toward Iraq, and Shahed's heading toward Qatar, possibly Bahrain, but I doubt Bahrain. But I don't know for a fact. So let's go back to this one, and I'll pull my Israel stuff up and see if it's anything updated on that.
Security Studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. So you are also here in Qatar with us. First of all, what was your experience of these strikes as they came over about an hour ago now?
Well, it looks like that Iran has already sent 6 ballistic missiles targeting Al Udeid military base in Qatar. Well, the first reaction, I was looking through the window, actually, just watching the debacle outside, and it seems that the Patriots did, the air defenses did a great job, and also other Qatari air defenses. And we were looking at that outside. I think the significance of this attack is the escalation of this confrontation, because this is the first time ever Iran targets U.S. bases outside Iraq, because they did that before inside Iraq, and Iraq was basically a battleground for between the U.S. and Iran probably since 2003. I'm not saying it's normal, but as if it has been normalized. But now this is going way beyond Iraq and attacking a third country like Qatar, which houses the base. The base, by the way, does not have only U.S. troops, it has also Qatari troops. But fortunately, and according to the statement coming from the spokesperson, this base has already been evacuated. My immediate assessment is that Iran has already informed the U.S. and probably the Qatari sides about this incoming attack. And probably this looks like the previous attack that was in response to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Basically symbolic, and the escalation might go in 2 ways. The first is, and I hope this is the case, that Iran after that might say, well, this is face-saving in front of our people. We did respond, and maybe now it's time for negotiations. or this would escalate in the other direction, which is a very dangerous one, because the U.S. would definitely respond to attacks that target their personnel if the Iranian side would not opt for negotiations, because the U.S. does not see itself as a peer to Iran, and they would not accept that Iran is trying to establish a deterrence, if you like, red line.
Why was Qatar targeted?
Well, it's not Qatar. I mean, the Iranians are saying we're not targeting Qatar. Qatar is a friendly country to Iran, and this has been consistent throughout at least the last 10 years. They're saying we are targeting U.S. bases in the region. And probably the statements, I haven't seen the statements coming from the Iranians, but I would expect that they would say that some of the bases in the region were part of the attack on Fordo and other cities, on Isfahan and other nuclear sites by the U.S. And they would say that this is a response because we cannot reach the U.S. And so we are trying to send a warning shot or shots to the Americans so that they don't attack us, because their bases are very close.
All right, let me give a comment on that, because it's really interesting. We went to 2 clips of listening to Al Jazeera while I was checking information on this screen over here. And what this gentleman just said, who is in Qatar, he stated, is exactly what Israel is saying right now. And this is where we'll get a little bit of interesting. So if you were here in the United States, if you're in the United States or wherever you're watching around the world, a couple of hours ago, we started getting notified. Not like an air alarm or nothing, but if you were on media or on TV, there were just little, like on the ticker of the news was coming across USC's elevated threat from Iranian attack today. And that was just kind of out there all before this happened. And then it ticked up a little bit, and there was an imminent threat from Iran. And it still was really being carried on news. I'm showing you Al Jazeera here because I couldn't get American media talking, and this is fine. We're getting solid information right here to guys in Qatar. It's about as good as you can get. And I think he's giving some facts here, because he talks about the symbolic attack. I can tell you Israel is also saying, the New York Times is also saying, and others are also saying, including, but out of Russia, that it is possible that even the United States was aware of this attack, the Trump administration. I am not a conspiracy theorist. If you want conspiracy theories, you're at the wrong place. Go find somebody else. But we have to look at every angle, the way these things unfold, because this is a way, as this gentleman said, for Iran to potentially save face. I remind you again, it was the foreign minister of Iran who was meeting with Vladimir Putin today. And I don't want to draw false conclusions, but for sure, somebody knew what was happening. It started to kind of get out, and then the imminent threat was raised. U.S. had already been evacuating these places. And it's really no different than right now in the video I released earlier. Where's the uranium at? Because nobody, including the United States, knows where the uranium is. That was taken out of those facilities prior to the strikes that the United States did on Fordow and the other facilities. So now we have Iran striking back. So instead of an escalation, is it possible that this is a de-escalation? What I mean by that is, we fired back, we save a little face, we're not going to do a regime change, and we're going to kind of tank our tanks and go home, our missiles and go home, settle everything down. You've destroyed our nuclear facilities, and life goes on. I'm just saying that's what they're talking about. Now, in agreement with what this gentleman said also was, you have the other side. We're going to see the official responses. Will there actually be the opposite happen and we have an escalation? So let me hop over here. Yeah, I see people chatting. I don't trust anything. I don't either. I just want to try to give you guys the best bit of facts that I can give you. Because it's very interesting the way things unfolded. I literally was prepping for the next live, which is at 4 o'clock, with Jake Bro and getting information ready. I was working on translating Vladimir Putin, who said something very important. And then all of a sudden it started dinging, especially the channels and sources of information I follow. And I started getting these messages and I said, man, I think this is happening. And it's just interesting how it unfolds and is unfolding. So let's go back. I'll pull this back
US
up.
Air Force and is the largest strategic asset of the American terrorist army
check my
in
latest.
West Asia. Well, Qatar's Ministry of Defense has released a statement following the Iranian strike on that US base. Qatar is saying that its air defenses intercepted a salvo of missiles targeting the Al Udeid airbase. It continued saying the incident did not result in any deaths nor in any injuries. The ministry says Qatar's airspace and territory are safe. Well, joining us now from northern Doha is our correspondent, Dorsa Jabari. Dorsa, you are also out on the streets of Doha. Tell us what the situation is there, some hour now after we heard those explosions.
Well, Laura, things are returning back to normal. It was quite a shock for the local population here when they heard those sounds of explosions over the Doha skies. Suddenly, just around 16:45 GMT, many people were initially shocked and scared and quite panicked. But then once they realized what had happened, things quieted down very rapidly. And now it appears, for now, the situation is very calm. Most people are going about their daily routine. This is, of course, very much a surprise to the local population, not something many people here were expecting. But there were signs from the hours leading up to this attack. First, the warnings issued by the U.S. Embassy here in Qatar, as well as the British Embassy, urging their nationals to stay indoors, basically, as well as then the Qatar International Airport, the Hamad International Airport, announcing the closure of its airspace temporarily. And then it was pretty much evidence that there was an attack looming. What we have also heard from the Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Majid Al-Ansari, is that the Qataris have condemned this action, and they say this is an attack on their sovereignty, and it is within their right to respond accordingly.
Okay, great. That's what I'm seeing. Okay, so here's the third one that's confirming. So Qatar has actually stated two stories going on. Qatar and Iran, they had already talked about it. They knew it. It was going to be a symbolic attack. And now she's saying what I'm reading over here is Qatar actually is not happy and they reserve the right to respond. So once again, as news is breaking, you never know which to follow, but you just lay both or all three options out there, and then we allow time to unfold a little bit and we actually find the truth. So right now, she presented both sides of the coin on the Qatari side, and that's what I'm seeing. Qatar said, yeah, okay, we defended. We don't feel this was like an attack at us directly, but you struck our nation, and we reserved the right to respond. That's what I'm seeing. CNN reporting right now, Tehran gave advance warning of the attacks to avoid casualties. It's just where it's interesting. It's why I think everybody knew this was coming. It hit an empty base from which the U.S. had withdrawn already 40 aircraft. Iranians say the number of missiles is a mirror response to U.S. strikes. And there is falling debris and there is destruction, but destruction is minimal. So once again, it takes us back to the question, was everything taken out of the air, or were there actually some hits there in Qatar at the air base?
And here we are seeing exactly that in Qatar.
Yes, I think initially people did not know what to do, and then there were guidances provided. The first thing people were told was to take shelter in the metro stations here or underground parking facilities, which there is no shortage of. So people did get instructions, and that has been the guidance from the local
And I do have
government.
the statement now coming out of Qatar condemning the attack on the United States Al Udeid Air Base. This is a gross violation of our country's sovereignty, and this is a gross violation of international law. So I think we're going to lean toward, I don't expect Qatar to respond. I don't expect that at all. I don't think anybody would. But for sure, they're not happy.
In this country, but many here are now hoping that this was it, that there is no continuation of these missiles launched towards Al Udeid Air Base here in Qatar.
Doha, I just wanted to get an idea from you as to what you felt when those explosions happened about an hour ago, because we certainly felt them here in the newsroom. There was a successive wave of explosions. You could feel the shaking on the ground here in the studio. Where were you and what was your experience?
Well, I was at one of the local malls getting a coffee, and I was waiting for a taxi. And then I heard, so I was outside, and I heard the sounds first, and then I felt the ground shake under me, and I knew that the attack had happened and it had started. And I heard at least 4 explosions in the skies. And then it was very difficult for people to understand what was happening. People around me were asking me what's going on, what should we do? And given that we have had some experience in this kind of situation in the past, I was a bit more calm than most people, but I urged them to basically stay indoors, not to be outside in open spaces. But really, it didn't last very long, and then we started getting news and information from official sources here about what people should do and what had just happened. The main question now is whether or not this is the end. And most likely, many analysts believe that this is what Iran intended to do. And it was more of a show of force, not only to the Americans that are based in the region and the officials in the White House and U.S. President Donald Trump, but also to the regional countries that are now in the firing line. Of course, the Iranians, the last thing they want to do is to
confirming all we're
drag
saying.
a country
Let me
like
do
Qatar
this for
into
you
this
guys
conflict.
now. Let's go to this image here. I'm actually getting this information in from the SBU. And you say, what's the SBU? If you're not here with us all the time and you've just stumbled across this live, that would be the security services of Ukraine, but they are actually reporting that the 3 possible strike locations here on the Al Udeid base is here in the 3 red boxes, and that there were 3 impacts. Now, whether that was direct impact, whether it was deflected after we did see air defense hit, and it actually came down in these 3 locations. This is what we're getting information from there. And they are also reporting the same thing that we shared 5 minutes ago. It's more on the side that Qatar possibly knew about it, but they're not happy, reserving the right to respond. And Ukraine is, in their intelligence, is reporting the same exact thing right now. So it's starting to lend some credibility. Can't say it's a fact, but it's lending some credibility towards Qatar's not happy about this. Let's go back to Al Jazeera.
That it signed with Lebanon in November of last year following 3 months of violence. But most people who are here have never witnessed anything like this. And certainly it was a very traumatic experience. I have had a lot of messages from people around the world wondering what has happened here and how could this country even be targeted. So it's important to understand that this was not intended to really harm the civilian population or directly the U.S. military personnel. It was more clearly a message to the U.S. government and U.S. military that Iran has the capability to launch direct attacks on U.S. military personnel in the Middle East. And it really is now up to the United States how this conflict moves forward, whether or not we're going to see the basically a trajectory of war engulf this region, or whether they would choose this as an opportunity to see it as an off-ramp to de-escalate the situation and provide an opportunity for Iran to really be able to recover from this constant bombardment that it has been under by Israel over the past 11 days or so.
What do you think are the conversations now between the Qataris and the Iranians? Because they have good diplomatic relations, these two countries. And as you say, Tehran did warn Doha in advance of these attacks. And we were seeing warnings by the various embassies here telling their citizens to shelter in place. So they did know that this was going to happen.
Yes, clearly, this was a coordinated attack meant to deliver a message. And I think the Qataris, who have had very close diplomatic relationship with Iran, were the obvious choice for the Iranians. They have had close relations, and even during negotiations in the past between Iran and the United States, it is usually either the state of Qatar or Oman that delivers the messages from Tehran to Washington. So clearly, they trust the Qataris, and this was seen as an effort to really minimize the damage and impact of this attack. So Qatar was the chosen.
So many people in the chat right now. I'm throwing in a poll. I think this will be interesting. I'm going to ask you to please answer it. The question is, do you think that this escalates the situation, USA response, or actually will de-escalate the conflict? Like this was, okay, this was the planned response. This is what's going to happen. So we'll see what you guys say here. So yeah, hit your votes in there, and let's see just the atmosphere of the chat. What you're thinking. Is this escalation or is this de-escalation?
Jabari joining us there from northern Doha. Dorsa, many thanks indeed.
While you're voting, I'm going to check the latest updates. We'll keep listening here.
Released a statement following the Iranian strike on the U.S. base. Qatar says its air defenses intercepted a salvo of missiles targeting the Al Udeid airbase. It continued saying the incident did not result in any deaths or injuries. Now, the ministry says Qatar's airspace and territory are safe. Well, just a short while ago, Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman Majid Al-Ansari put out a statement, and he said the state of Qatar strongly condemns the attack that targeted Al Udeid Air Base by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. We consider this a flagrant violation of the sovereignty of the state of Qatar, its airspace, international law and the United Nations Charter. We affirm that Qatar reserves the right to respond directly in
We nailed it again, guys.
And scale of this brazen aggression in line with international law. Iran's revolution
confirming what we were sharing 5 minutes ago. So good.
These attacks in Doha.
I want to give you facts.
It says it launched a powerful and devastating missile attack on the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. This base serves as the command center of the U.S. Air Force and is the largest strategic asset of the American terrorist army in West Asia. Let's go to the White House now, where we can join our correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. And Kimberly, as far as we know, Trump is currently in the Situation Room. What more can you tell us?
That's right. The U.S. president in the Situation Room of the White House. Initially, his national security briefing had been slated for the Oval Office, but that has since been moved, given the fact that there is this developing situation with the attacks on U.S. bases. Namely Qatar and Al Udeid. Now, what we know is that the U.S. president is monitoring the attacks and is accompanied by not only his Secretary of Defense, but also his chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kane. We also know that the United States was aware and was informed in advance that this would be taking place, and as a result was able to, just as the Qatari Foreign Ministry did, was able to alert civilians and the personnel at Al Udeid so that it could, in fact, as well as the airspace, begin diverting flights and minimizing the casualties that are there. Now, it is important to note that, as you've mentioned, that the Al Udeid is, for the United States, the headquarters for the Central Command. It is the largest installation in the region. There are in excess of 10,000 troops there. And we also know that it was expected as a target. The United States, even before there was this coordination by Iran, had expected. So we know in advance that there had been movement of most of the aircraft that was located at Al Udeid. It was moved in advance, given the fact that the United States expected that it was possible there could be a target. Now, the reason for this is because we know that any sort of firing from Iran, according to military officials here, of cruise missiles or ballistic missiles would only take minutes to get to Qatar from Iran. And so out of an abundance of caution, that is what was done. As well, we know that there's the possibility of swarming drones. But so far, we've not had reports of that. Instead, what reports we are getting here at the White House is that the attack by the Iranians on the airbase is seemed to be designed to match similar to what the United States did in its attack in the number of missiles that were used. In other words,
all right, so we know that information will come back. I can tell you right now, guys, and at some point we'll see. I was seeing if we were going to get a direct response from the White House, but it's looking like what we're seeing right now, from what I'm reading, is Tehran actually told the United States they were going to do this. Do not have proof of that, but we're hearing that more and more. And Qatar, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm just sharing that with you. And it is a show of force and a statement to save face and to move towards the next phase. With all of that said, we have the Qatari response that they just made public 5 minutes ago. And I was sharing with you that Qatar reserves the right to retaliate. So is that just statements? And this was already kind of in the game plan for the day. But I will tell you this, and this is coming from confirmed sources inside Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, has made a statement that Russia is ready to help Iran in the conflict, but Tehran must formulate its requests and demands clearly. Now, that doesn't mean Russia's ready to come and we're looking at WW3. But it is in support of the Iranian strikes today, whether it was just a show that, hey, we have missiles too, but we've got that confirmed.
Until further notice amid the regional escalation. I mean, as you say, Kimberly, the US was made aware in advance of this attack, as was Qatar. So given that you are saying that it could be considered a symbolic attack, a contained attack, as Iran responded after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, should we expect Trump to further escalate again?
We have to take the president's words at face value, but we also know that the U.S. president is heavily influenced by whomever he has just spoken to and can make sometimes rash or, sudden decisions. So it's really hard to gauge how the United States will respond. If the president goes with his word, and he has reiterated this on multiple occasions, there will be another response by the United States that will be even greater in force than the initial strikes that the United States took on those 3 nuclear sites in Iran just a couple of days ago. Having said that, there are reports already that as part of a precaution in terms of trying to defend the bases that are currently being considered vulnerable, in addition to the one in Qatar, we know that there have been reports of U.S. jets being scrambled in Saudi Arabia, mobilizing for possible attacks in locations like Syria, in Kuwait, as well as we have been reporting the concerns in Iraq. So,
okay, so let me tell you this. 10 minutes ago, and this information's coming out of Israel, they confirmed that Israel was already running sorties over Tehran. That's the Israeli Air Force, not the American Air Force. The Israeli, the IDF, already in Tehran running sorties. And what she just said, and she's there at the White House, and Al Jazeera reported the White House, U.S. fighter jets that are scrambled from the base in Saudi Arabia appear headed to attack Iran and run sorties. That's it. No confirmation.
Dramatically.
But
why do you think Qatar was chosen as Iran's target of out of all the US air bases in the region?
We don't know if they're going to be attacking other bases, but certainly Al-Udeid is where the central command is for the Middle East, and I suspect it's just one of many. But clearly, it is a message to the Trump administration that we will hit you at your center of nerve, as it were, because this is supposed to be the command and control, if you will.
Marwan, you're normally based here in Qatar, in Doha, with us. You've lived here for a very long time. Would you ever have expected something like this?
Certainly a first. It's certainly a first. This war that started 2 years ago, almost, it's setting a lot of precedents. A lot of precedents in the region, a lot of precedents in international relations, a lot of precedents in as far as American, Israeli, Middle Eastern relations and conflict. Some of it is very reminiscent of things that happened in the past. We spoke a lot about how the war on Iran reminds us of the war on Iraq 22 years earlier. But this is the first where Iran hits an American target outside Iraq. Mm-hmm. That's certainly new. But also, it's new the way, of course, America attacked Iran and the way Israel preemptively or preventively attacked Iran in a war of choice. This is really all taking us back to a simple, annoying fact, is that one indicted criminal is taking the entire region to the unknown. The way Netanyahu has been manipulating the American administration, the way he chose to attack Iran when it was basically defenseless after an earlier attack on its
I'm getting a message right now that more U.S. jets just scrambled out of Saudi Arabia. And, you know, earlier when we began this, I showed you the air cover map. And there was still a lot of air traffic, and that's when Qatar was closing. But now, I'll give you this right here, guys. This is what we're looking at right now. So Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar down here, Bahrain, all of this area, Jordan, Syria, it's all closed. So it's indicative of something for sure. There is a lot of aircraft in the air. I know that Israel has just hit Tehran with sorties, and I know that the United States, their planes are in the air. There's talk they're heading to Iran. That may be why we're not hearing nothing from Trump administration, or it may not be. They could just be in the air for safety, security, or a further attack or whatever. Nobody really knows, but I can tell you there's a lot of aircraft in the air right now, and all of this airspace is closed. So that gives us some indication of what is happening here. Let me check the latest.
This is the thing about this misunderstanding, this selective memory, this ahistorical view of Middle East and Middle East conflicts and wars, is that everyone seems to think that, you know, they are, and they will be the first to do this and that and the other. We've seen it before, and we've seen how it has a ramification, and we see one war leading to another war, And so this continues, and it will probably expand. And now Trump has no choice. I mean, what is he going to do? Either he will do what he did with Soleimani and say, okay, fine, now we are kit, as they say, we're equal. We've killed Soleimani, you've bombed our base in Iraq, and that's the end of that. But if the Iranians are putting all the American bases on notice, he has no choice but to respond. If he responds, what does that say about his agenda? What does that say about his legacy? What does that say about his base? What does that say about his beliefs about other American presidents that preceded him that started or got involved or were manipulated into wars in the Middle East? So it makes him, one of many that all basically ended up in failure. You and I were speaking earlier about regime change. America has tried regime change. We've seen even American officials in their, in one Phil Gordon's book about losing the long game, how it was all regretful. There was no point. It just, America lost a lot in it and lost credibility and money. It didn't lead to the intended change and so on and so forth. And here we have Netanyahu, once again, manipulating an American president into yet another regional confrontation.
And we're talking a lot about the US response, Marwan. But what about Qatar's response? It has put out a statement saying it reserves the right to respond, and it is within its rights under the UN Charter and under international law. What do we think they are going to do about this?
Well, they certainly established a principle that, you shouldn't be attacking another sovereign country, in this case, Qatar. But I think there were so many apologies in just 2 hours by the Iranians towards Qatar that we didn't mean, it's not about you, we don't want, we understand you, we appreciate you, and so on and so forth. I think it's probably important that they reserve the right, but whether they will act, I doubt it, but it remains to be seen.
Okay. Marwan, many thanks indeed for joining us.
All right, I think we can leave it right there. We're completely caught up. I can tell you the Iranian defense minister is on a phone conversation right now with Sergei Lavrov in Russia. So we know that Russia has came out and made a statement. We basically we stand with Ukraine. We know that there were multiple missiles launched. We have conflicting reports on 3 hits, 3 deflections, how many were taken out. The bottom line is, if you're just joining, Iran has struck, attempted to strike or struck Al Udeid Air Base there in military installation in Qatar. They've also slung a missile at Iraq. They've sent drones towards Iraq. They've sent drones towards Qatar. Qatar has said we reserve the right to respond. We know that Russia has come out and officially stated that we stand with Iran in this. We know that Israel has already been running sorties. We know that the British, the French, and the United States, their planes are in the air. What they are doing, there is no word coming in from the Trump administration right now. We know that all the airspace is closed, and we have senior official at U.S. Department of Defense confirming the strike on the Al Udeid Air Base using short and medium-range ballistic missiles from Iran. No American casualties. We are checking on further details now. So that is what we will do. It is, 9 p.m. over there, 9:30 in Iran. I can tell you the only last thing coming out of Israel is that they have stated that they will continue their campaign until their assignment is done. And we've heard from Benjamin Netanyahu at times. We've heard from the president. We've heard from multiple representatives.
Number of missiles that was launched from Iran, from the western coast of Iran towards the Al Udeid base in Qatar, the United States Army base. And some of the rockets or the missiles were intercepted by the air defenses. This was within the news context, whereas the United States attacked the Iranian nuclear facilities on Sunday morning. And Iran...
He's just repeating what we know, so nothing new there. But that's where we're at right now. And Israel stating just minutes ago that this doesn't change what they're doing. That's what I was closing out with. We will continue our campaign, and their campaign is complete destruction of the nuclear program of Iran. Now, we know that the United States helped in that with the strikes, but even the United States, Russia asked the question today as well, where's the uranium? That question needs to be asked. I will be coming back on a live in 2 hours with Jake Bro. So make sure if you haven't subscribed, please consider turn the notification bell on. So it's perfect timing. In 2 hours, going to have Jake Bro on, and we will have 2 more hours of updates, and we'll get his response and analysis on this situation. We're planning to be together on live from 4 to 5. So that'll be in 2 hours from now, and we shall see. And the other assignment that the president of Israel had said was, we want to take the head off of the snake, and that was a direct reference to regime change there in the Ayatollah Khamenei. And we know that the United States also, through President Donald Trump, made a statement hours ago about regime change in Iran, and then throwing out, instead of MAGA, it's MEGA, make Iran great again. And that's just fracturing internal politics inside the United States. And we'll talk about that with Jake, Joe Brack. No, Jake Bro. So make sure you do that. Grab some lunch. I'm going to grab some lunch, get all this stuff analyzed and ready to roll. And we'll see you in 2 hours. I don't think I'm missing anything. We're all caught up. My last thing is, okay, got it. Always from my guys in Israel. Currently, President Trump in the Situation Room watching. He is updating on what is unfolding in the Middle East. And as of right now, does not intend to respond to the Iranian attack. That's coming from Israel. You guys did drop the poll there in 20 minutes. In the poll, we had 3,800 votes. You think this escalates the situation? The U.S. responds, or actually will de-escalate this conflict? Yes, 73%. No, 26%. So of the folks watching the live stream, 73% thinks it will escalate. 26% think it will de-escalate. We'll ask Jake Bro his opinion in 2 hours. Thank you, guys. And I'm going to run my outro from my normal live stream. A lot of Ukraine stuff on there. And tell you goodbye in the chat. We'll be back in 2 hours.
Slava Ukraini!